The sound of the metal bucket skidding across the marble floor echoed through the mansion like a gunshot, sharp and humiliating, and for a brief moment the entire house seemed to hold its breath. The maid stood frozen, her hands trembling, while the rich man's arrogant son laughed, convinced that power and money made him untouchable. What he did not know was that this single careless act, this cruel kick driven by ego, was about to crack open a truth so heavy it would bring his world to a sudden, terrifying halt. Before the story goes any further, if you believe kindness matters in a world that often rewards arrogance, if you believe people deserve second chances no matter where they come from, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The mansion had always been a symbol of excess, rising above the city like a fortress built from entitlement. Chandeliers glowed day and night, carpets were softer than clouds, and silence was maintained not by peace but by fear. The maid, an older woman with tired eyes and a bent back, had worked there for years. She arrived before sunrise, left long after dark, and never once complained. Her hands were rough from scrubbing floors that were never dirty enough for the people who walked on them. She moved quietly, as if trying not to take up space in a world that never noticed her. The son, spoiled by wealth and shielded from consequences, had grown up believing everyone around him existed for his convenience. He saw staff as furniture, useful but invisible. On that particular day, anger burned through him because a business deal had gone wrong and his father had scolded him for the first time in his life. He needed someone smaller to feel powerful over, someone who could not fight back. When he saw the maid cleaning the hallway, something ugly inside him rose to the surface. The kick was impulsive, childish, and cruel, but to him it felt like release. The bucket tipped, water spilling across the polished floor, soaking the maid's worn shoes. She did not cry out. She did not protest. Instead, she slowly bent down, her movements heavy, as if every joint in her body carried decades of unspoken pain. In that moment, something shifted. The son noticed her hands shaking more than before, noticed the faint scar near her wrist, noticed the way she carried herself not with submission but with a quiet dignity that did not match the uniform she wore. As she struggled to lift the bucket again, memories stirred in her mind, memories she had buried deep to survive. Years ago, she had lived in a world far removed from this mansion, a world of influence, education, and responsibility. Life had not been kind. Betrayal, loss, and sacrifice had stripped her of everything except her integrity. She had chosen silence over revenge, humility over pride. Cleaning floors was easier than reopening wounds that never truly healed. The son's amusement faded when he saw a familiar emblem on a small pendant that slipped from beneath her collar. It was old, polished smooth by time, but unmistakable. His breath caught. That symbol was not something a maid should possess. It belonged to a family his own father spoke of in hushed tones, a family once powerful enough to shape industries and destroy empires. Confusion replaced arrogance, and for the first time in his life, fear crept in. He demanded answers, his voice lacking its usual confidence, but the maid remained silent. That silence pressed harder on him than any accusation could have. Later that evening, driven by unease, he confronted his father, mentioning the pendant and the woman who wore it. The color drained from the rich man's face. His hands trembled as he asked for every detail, every movement, every word. When he finally sat down, it was not the posture of a king but of a man facing ghosts he had prayed would never return. The truth unfolded slowly, painfully. The maid was not just a servant. She was the widow of the man who had once saved the entire business from collapse, the woman who had signed away her rights to protect employees when others ran. She had disappeared after a scandal engineered by rivals, choosing anonymity to shield her child and herself from further harm. The mansion itself stood on foundations she had helped lay, yet she had returned not for recognition but because she needed work and believed dignity came from honesty, not status. The son felt something inside him shatter. Every cruel joke, every dismissive glance, every moment of entitlement replayed in his mind like a punishment. He realized that while he had inherited wealth, he had never earned respect. The woman he humiliated had carried more strength in her silence than he had ever shown in his loud, empty confidence. The next morning, the mansion felt different. The maid arrived as usual, expecting another day of invisibility. Instead, she was met with lowered eyes and hesitant movements. The son could barely meet her gaze. Shame weighed on him, heavy and unfamiliar. He wanted forgiveness but understood he had no right to ask for it easily. Change, he realized, was not about words but actions repeated when no one was watching. Days turned into weeks. He began to help where he once ordered, to listen where he once dismissed. He learned the names of staff members, learned their stories, learned how little he truly knew about the world beyond his privilege. The maid watched quietly, not with bitterness but with cautious hope. She had seen men promise change before, only to retreat when it became inconvenient. One evening, as sunlight faded through the tall windows, the son finally understood the weight of what he had done. Kicking a bucket had been easy. Carrying responsibility was not. He recognized that arrogance had been his armor, protecting him from confronting his own emptiness. Respect had to be earned, humility practiced, and kindness chosen daily. If this story is touching something inside you right now, if it reminds you of moments when you judged too quickly or were judged unfairly, please pause for a second and engage with this video. Like it, share it, and let others feel this message too. And before the story ends, write a comment saying, "Kindness matters," so we know you were here and felt it. In the end, the maid did not seek apologies or recognition. Her victory was quieter. She watched a young man learn what wealth could never buy, and that was enough. The mansion still stood tall, but its walls felt less cold, its silence less heavy. One act of cruelty had exposed a truth, and one act of humility had begun to heal it. And for those who witnessed the change, it became a reminder that you never truly know who someone is, until life forces you to see beyond the uniform, beyond the status, and straight into the human heart.